and I'm here this morning to show you the new Minibrute 2 range. So the Minibrute 2 was announced about a month ago now, no, 1 week ago or something. It's actually 4 instruments, 3 that are here and 1 that's right here. So here we have the Minibrute 2 right here, the keyboard version. We have the Minibrute 2S, which is this one right here. We have, and then we have Eurorack cases. So the rack brute, which you can see right here, and so it's on in a 3U size. So 1 row of Eurorack, and the rack brute 6U, which is right here on 2 rows of Eurorack. So I'm going to go through each of these instruments one after the other, and I'm going to start with the Minibrute 2. So Minibrute 2 is an update on the Minibrute that we released about 6 years ago now, which is a monophonic analog synthesizer, and it still is. Minibrute 2 is still a monophonic analog synthesizer. So it's got 2 oscillators. First oscillator still has the same waveform mixing as we had on the original Minibrute and on Microbrute and then on Matrix Brute, so Sawtooth with some ultraso. The square wave gives you pulse width, which of course you can modulate. All the way to where you don't hear any sound. Alright, then we have the triangle with the Metalizer. The Metalizer is a wavefolding circuit. We changed it a bit compared to the original Minibrute and Microbrute. It has a kind of a cleaner sound, less metallic, I would say, but easier to control, especially with the external CD control. So here's how it sounds on a bass sound. Then we got some noise, basic white noise, and an external input at modular level. So it expects amplitudes of 5 volt, 10 volts peak. We have a second oscillator, and that's one big difference with the original Minibrute, which only had 1 oscillator, is that now you can do kind of this big sound. So the second oscillator is a lot more simple in design. You have a tune control right here. You have waveform selection. So it can do either square wave, sawtooth, or sine wave. And you have 3 different tuning controls. So the first one is fine, so it's 2 octaves across. And you can set it to all, in which case it's 8 octaves across. So. And you have LFO mode, which gives you, sub-audio rate levels, but it can be used as a modulator, in particular for the first oscillator. So for instance, I could listen to the first oscillator and set some FM from the first oscillator, from the second one, from pretty slow rates, and then if you set it to all range, you can go up to audio rate modulation. Right. So then we have the Steiner-Parker filter. So it's the same filter we used in the Minibrute, Microbrute, and Matrix Brute, but again we changed it a bit, adapted the design. Still sounds very similar, still that kind of harsh tone that you get with the 12 dB Steiner-Parker filter. But the main difference, I would say, is that we make sure that the resonance would self-oscillate even at low and high frequency. whereas on the Minibrute you would get a kind of a drop off of the same oscillation around 300 Hertz. So here you can still get some tones at low frequency. So it's easier to do kind of this FM percussion with right. Another big difference with the other Minibrute is that you can modulate the resonance. So which can do some nice screaming tones or cleaner sound. You still have low pass, high pass, band pass. It so band pass and high pass. Right. Then we still have the brute factor. So the brute factor is a feedback from after the VCA back into the input of the filter. So it kind of responds dynamically to the signal you plug in. So for instance, if I go get kind of this weird strange tones, and it really depends on the kind of sound you plug it in. So it can sound kind of like a distortion, and then it gets all non-linear. Master volume. So then we have the waveform mixer I explained. In terms of modulations, we have two envelopes. One envelope is connected to the filter by default. So let's have a clean tone. Classic ADSR envelope, and we have an AD envelope. That's a new module that we designed with the help of Yves Husson, who also helped us back on the original Minibrute. And if we listen to it, it can do either gates, so it's attack, hold, release envelope. It can do tricks, so it just triggers when I press a note, and it doesn't care for how long I keep the note pressed. And then it can also loop. So can loop like this, and it can go pretty fast, so you can do kind of, you can use it as some kind of an LFO. And in gate and loop mode, what it does is that it loops whenever I hit a key, and when I release the key, it stops looping. So all right. The times of the attack and decay can be controlled with CV control, and that's one major difference with the original Minibrute, is that you get these 48 patch points here for control voltage. So you have inputs and outputs for, well, the oscillator, the filter, the VCA, but also for the sequencer controls. You have some utility modules like inverters, an additional VCA to do extra modulations, and MIDI outputs. So it outputs the keyboard, the velocity, half pressure of the keyboard. So for instance, I was talking about this AD envelope. I could, for instance, use the other envelope to control the rate of the decay. So let's use the ADSR, take it out, invert it, and then send it to the decay time. So using the patch bay really expands what can be done with the Minibrute 2. There are a lot of patches to explore. I don't know, I've spent a lot of time just messing around with, you know, inputs and outputs and how things can go wrong when you start patching different things. You have FM control on the first oscillator with exponential FM. from the second oscillator, but you can also do linear FM. So again, from oscillator 2, it sounds like this. Let's use a triangle wave. You can modulate, of course, the filter frequency, the resonance. The architecture of the synths is a semi-modular, which means that everything is pre-patched. Let's say all the parameters already have an input control, but you can break that connection. For instance, the filter has a connection to the ADSR. So by default, this is what happened, but I can break this one with a cable. So now I don't have the ADSR, and I could, for instance, plug an LFO to this, and now I have an alpha on my envelope. So part of the fun is rerouting stuff that was initially designed. There's a lot to explore just by using the default patching, and then a lot of fun when you start, well, changing stuff. We also have, so that's the upper part of the instruments. I went in length on it because it is similar between Minibrute 2 and Minibrute 2S. We have exactly the same controls on both instruments. One thing I forgot to cover are these two LFOs here, which can be synchronized to the sequencer or free running. Let's see. With a bunch of different waveforms. Right, the two LFOs are identical. And then over here is the sequencer area. So that's on the keyboard version, we took what we had on keystep and adapted it to a monophonic instrument. So as an arpeggiator, can go different modes. So up, down, up, down, random. I can set the swing. I can set the swing. I can set the gate length. Right. And the tempo resolution. I'll reduce the swing. Right. It can also work as a sequencer, so the basic approach is that you enter notes one after the other. You can enter silences by pressing tab, and you can do longer notes by holding a note and pressing tab. So it's pretty easy to enter sequences. I don't know, I just did this one random, but by So now I see I forgot to add one step at the end, so I can do a pan and add just one silence. So that's also one thing you can do is add one step at the end. I can remove 3 steps. Put them back in. One thing you can do also is just re-record in real time all of the sequence. It's a pretty fun sequencer because it goes really fast. You can really create the melodies quickly with it. You can synchronize it to well, using either the internal plug or via USB or MIDI or with the plug control. The plug control can be found here in the patch bay. Let's move on to the sequencer version. So I will not cover all the synth voice again because it is identical to the other one, and I will focus on this part right here. So I have a basic tone right here. It can be used as a sequencer and as an arpeggiator again, but you have a lot more flexibility on the sequencer aspect. I can record stuff in just in step-based. For instance, I can activate some stuff, change the notes. that's the basic approach. I can set the pitch with the knobs. I can set the slide time with holding shift and turning the knob. So I have slides now. I can set the gate length, so I can have very short notes and longer ones, even tight. All right, and I can also do bursts. So I could say that this one gets repeated 4 times. So for each step, I can set a number of repetition from 1 to 4, and inside the step, instead of doing tak tak, it would go ta da ta da. Then I have 2 more tracks here called velocity and pressure, which by default will record the velocity and pressure that I use, because I can simply just also record in real time. And whatever I record in real time, the velocity and the pressure that I did on the keyboard will be recorded. And then I can also change what these tracks do. For instance, instead of controlling the velocity, I could say that I want to send envelopes or use gates to trigger the 2 envelopes separately. So for instance, I will try to use this track as a secondary envelope. Let's try that. So I'll do a basic sequence. I'll erase this one. Whereas this one starts from something like just basic C3. Okay, and then this track I will set it to envelope. And now on one of the steps I will generate an envelope. So like this. And now I will patch this envelope to the pitch control of the oscillator. So I can set the decay time. I can also set the attack time. So now I can do. Right. So you get the idea. It's pretty flexible. You can route this output to, for instance, an envelope to anything on the instrument. I could also generate LFOs. So the idea is that anytime a step is active, it will change the rate of an LFO. And I can set different length. Either quantized to the tempo or not, and it makes it pretty easy to do kind of wobble sound. So let's try with the, let's say like a slow down. Let's try in the filter instead. So you get the idea. Each sequence can have up to 64 steps. I can store up to 64 sequences in the Minibrute 2S. I can have a different length for the basic pitch and gate sequence and for these separate tracks that I just showed you, like envelopes and LFOs. To do kind of complex polyrhythm, I can also set one of the tracks to pitch control, so it will output another quantized CV, so I could control both oscillators at the same time, but with different, for instance, with different durations. So let's try that just to show you. I will start again from a simple sequence, erase this one, just a step here. I can also quantize the pitch to a scale. So for instance, I'm going to quantize it to, let's say, a minor scale. So now I don't have access to all the notes. The second oscillator will be controlled by this track, which I will set to pitch. So now I have this track. And now I can set a different length for the second one. So now they will kind of beat against each other and create more complex sequences.
Hello and welcome to Andertons TV. I'm Jack here. They've let me loose out here in LA. We've just watched a very in-depth run through on this bad boy, the Minibrute 2. Very comprehensive. He's got a very big muscly right arm there because for no other reason than the fact he's been holding the camera for ages. But we thought maybe a bit later it might take a while to get up. So we're just going to have a listen to some of the core waveforms on it. I've got it going. So we've just got the normal saw wave out there. Let's have a listen to those raw waves first. So that's a saw wave. Square. Triangle, if you hear that. It's got some noise in there. Now, that's the first oscillator, but big new thing is we've got a second oscillator. So let's bring in that second oscillator. It's quite a bit limited in what it can do on there. We've only got the 3 waveforms. So that's the saw on it. That's the sine. That's the square. Let's have a listen to those 2 saws put together. So I tune those. So really fat there. Okay, let's stick to the 1 and we're going to turn that cut off down and hear the filter. Apparently they've refined the filter, so this is a refined filter. Mainly, and also the self-resonance characteristics of it at lower cut-off ones. So let's crank the resonance, and forgive me if this blows the speakers up. So down there, the chap was doing a great demo, really good for FM, like toms and things like that. What I loved as well is this new sequencer from the Keystep. Now, obviously, I know nothing about it, but love the new bits in this, and also this patch spray. Come on, Stu, get in there. Come on, Stu. This is going to be fabulous, especially with their new system here as well. I really like the look of the powered rack units. Again, we're going to have a really comprehensive walk through all that stuff. Just wanted to show, I think the additions they've made to it have been fab, and I think it's not long till they're in the stores, especially if you're looking for a gateway into modular synthesis. This, with the added rack brutes that they've got, is a really good way to stop. Because I was looking at it, I was like, I don't know what power supplies to buy for it. But I'm just going to have a little fiddle, see if we get some more music out of the thing. Sorry for waffling on. It's just, hey, I'm getting used to it. All right, see you later.